I heard Shmuel that the president Zelensky one time came to an event with Rabbi Kamenetsky. Is that true? Yeah. What he just said, he said a few words. We participated. He came what? He came to Crown Heights with a group.
I'm not sure, but I know that he wanted to do the 770.
He went into 770.
No, I'm not sure if he came to 770, but he wanted to come to it. And there is a Russian school, so they got him there.
I hear now. I don't hear.
So, do you know free show?
Yeah, free. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was here.
He went there. Did he put on tefillin? We really, in Chabad, we have divided loyalties. It's very hard to see this whole thing, because here he's really behaving like a hero, rallying the people in this terrible war. Because if it not for him, Ukraine would have just collapsed. I think so. They have no other leadership. But on the other hand, Mr. Putin has been very good to us. He has been in Russia. He's been very, very good to the Chabad Shluchim. He helps them. He sponsors them. They've built up a huge network under his with his blessings. But he has one terrible mistake, that he's holding on to the Rebbe's books. And the Rebbe said, he is holding on to the library of the previous Rebbe. When the previous Rebbe left Russia, he took all his books with him. They didn't want to let them. He said, so I'm not leaving. He said, take your books, but go. Because he was fighting against the whole of Russia. And so he took his books with him to Poland. But then he had to flee Poland in 1940. It was actually Nazis helped him to get out secretly, the secret operation. And he got out, but the books remained behind. And then when Russia conquered Poland, they took the books. And the Rebbe has said these books are in captivity. They're just like prisoners in war, and they need to be returned, because the Frierdiker Rebbe is alive and he's here and he wants his books. These books are holy books. They have holiness in them. And Mr. Putin is not letting them out. And the Rebbe said about them, about somebody who took books some years ago, somebody was stealing books from the library and selling them for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Precious, precious books. Old books. You can't get any duplicate of a siddur of the Baal Shem Tov, things like that. He was selling them. So the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, whoever has these items has a time bomb in his possession. He says, I can't guarantee the safety of anybody who has this. That's what the Rebbe said. So it's a very, very unfortunate situation. People are suffering everywhere because of it. The Beinoni, Shem should watch over all our people and over all people. Somebody sent me a very disturbing image, picture, a photograph. Very disturbing. Of two soldiers in camouflage uniform, not in the city, in a natural setting. Can't see their face. And they're holding a big flag with a swastika in the middle. A Nazi flag. And you wonder, who are these soldiers? Are they Ukrainian? I mean, I think that's the implication. Is it a propaganda stunt by Russia to bring Ukraine into disfavor?
I never saw
Are they Russians? It's hard to think that they would be Russian soldiers would do that, because that's one of the reasons supposedly for this whole campaign is to put an end to neo-Nazi nationalism in Ukraine. But is it really true?
No, neo-Nazi, it's also in Russia.
What?
It's also in Russia, very big. And with the years, they're only getting bigger. And I think that those neo-Nazi, they're just jumping on the war that is now happening. Because any war that will happen by the end, the Jews suffer the most.
Very wise words to what you're saying. Did you hear what she said? She said, whatever happens, the neo-Nazis in Russia or in Ukraine jump on it for their own purposes, because in the end of any conflict like this, it's the Jews that suffer the most. Well, that's experience talking, unfortunately. All right. So we started yesterday, chapter 12. Who is the Beinoni? The Beinoni, the way he defines it here, never gives in to the Yetza Hara in any of the areas that over which he has control. Now here comes a very important point. Listen carefully. The tzaddik takes control of himself, and he listens entirely to his Yetzer Tov, to his godly inclination. And it's just like he's having a dialogue with Hashem, because the godly soul is a part of God. The godly soul is not a loyal servant of God. The godly soul is Hashem. He says, clear words, the beginning of the second chapter, Hanefesh Hashenis b'Yisrael, the second soul in the Jewish person, he Chelek Elokam Imal Mamash is a part of God. If you're holding on to something, a part of it, you're holding on to it. So the Nefesh Hashenis is Hashem. And the tzaddik is connected, completely connected. The Rasha is not completely connected and sometimes gets disconnected. That's what we learned in chapter 11. All the different possibilities of this connection. Chapter 12, we learn now about the Beinoni, who is not just listening to his Yetzer Tov, to the godly part of his character. He also has to listen to the other side, because the other side is alive and well. And there's a war going on between the two of them. I remember, excuse me, take another sip of water, try and clear up my throat. Early morning throatitis. It was on Purim. I was there. There was a chassid named Rabbi Sasanko who took a lot of mashke. He was good shikker. He was drunk at the Rebbe's Verbringen, and he wanted to say something because he was, very happy. Hasidim did not speak at the Rebbe's Verbringen. You don't speak in front of, it's a sign of a fool to speak in front of somebody who's greater than yourself in years or in wisdom. He wanted to speak. And another chassid was grabbed onto his garter and was pulling him down. He shouldn't speak. The Rebbe said, let him speak. So he told the story. Chassid was talking to a misnagid. And the chassid said to the misnagid, sometimes, he says, I'm fighting all the time with my Yetzer Hara, with the other side. Sometimes He gives me patch, but good. He really knocks me down. And sometimes I give him patch, and I really knock him down. If you want to see what it's like when I knock him down, you come tomorrow at Mincha time. I'm going to prepare myself, was the implication. The Rebbe liked that very much. The Rebbe smiled. So the Beinoni is constantly struggling, involved in the struggle between the Yetzer Tov and the other side. Why is he not a Rasha? Because he never loses the struggle, but he never wins. He never wins. This is the existential scenario of the existentialists of the 19th of the 20th century. They fight the good fight and they never win. And they keep on fighting. The tzaddik wins. The Rasha loses. The Beinoni doesn't lose. He doesn't lose in act, not, he doesn't do a bad thing. He doesn't say a bad thing. But in his mind, the war is raging. In his mind and in his heart. It's page 175. Shleisha Lavush, who is the Beinoni? He has three, we have three garments of the soul. They are what you say, what you do, what you think. These three garments of the soul, of the animal soul, which are thought, speech, and deed, from the side of Klippa. Klippa hides Hashem. Klippa is a hiding of God. So these three garments that the animal soul, the godly soul wants these garments, wants to wear these garments, and the animal soul wants to wear these garments. There's a Mishnah that sort of portrays it. It just fell into my head. I never thought of this, but realized this, but there's a classic Mishnah that the children learn in yeshiva when they start to learn Talmud. And it goes like this. Two people are walking along the streets, Reuben and Shimon, and they see a garment lying there in the streets. And in the Mishnah, it says a talus. A nice talus. Happens that Reuben's talus got torn. He sees a talus lying in the street. It's hefker. Anybody could pick it up. And he runs over and picks it up. At the same moment, Shimon also picks it up, and they're having a tug of war. And now Reuben says, "This is mine, I got it first." And Shimon says, "No, you didn't get it first, I got it first." And neither of them wants to let go. So what do? They don't let go. They take it to the Rav. And they say, "Rabbi, I picked up this garment and he's trying to take it away from me." He says, "No, I picked up the garment and he's trying to take it away from me." What do? So the Mishnah says, we cut the garment in half. We give each one a half. What does the famous story does that remind you of?
Solomon.
King Solomon with the baby, yeah.
And that's how they knew the real mother.
What happens? Well, and here, what happens when Reuben says, "You know what? I can be a nice guy. Let him have his half, but let me have my half." What happens? Did they make peace? What do they get?
Something that's useless. They get a half.
No.
Someone gets it.
Someday in Mitzvah Hashem, you'll be a Rebbetzin, but you won't be a rabbi.
They have nothing because a talit in the half is nothing.
No, they could have half a talus.
I can.
Yeah, but not in this case, because in the case where they get a half is where they both say, "It's mine. The whole thing is 100% mine." So, okay, half and half. But here, Reuben is a nice guy. He says, "Let him have his half. Let me have my half." So what are they arguing about? They're arguing over a half. So Shimon gets 3/4, and Reuben, who was a nice guy, only gets 1/4. Because they're both arguing about the remaining. Reuben agrees that Shimon can have half. And Shimon says, no, I want the whole thing. And Reuben says, you can't have the whole thing. I deserve at least half. So they're arguing about the half. So we split the half. So Reuben gets a quarter. And this is the wisdom and the will of God. And when we know this Mishnah, it's not just we know a nice mental exercise. We know this is the will and the wisdom of God. And then we learned in chapter 5 about the Tanya. What if we have a case like this in the Mishnah that never happens? And it never will happen. The people should come with such arguments to the Beis Din, and we learn it and we know it, then we have in our mind the will and the wisdom of God. And our mind is in that law, which is the will and the wisdom of God. And this is, I'm quoting now, chapter 5, this is a unity that is beyond comparison to any other unity in the physical world. To be totally united with the will and the wisdom of God from every side and angle. So the Beinoni is struggling to be united with Hashem in this way, but there's a Reuben, and there's the godly soul, and then there's the other side, and they're both tugging at the garment. Each one says, it's mine. The other side says, it's mine. And the Yetza says, no, it's mine. Well, that's how they learn the Mishnah in Shemayim, in Gan Eden, where there are no talesim, but you have the garments of the soul, and there's the wars going on over who deserves possession of the garments of the soul. So, by the way, I just want to add an observation. That sometimes the question is asked, Sarah left the room, unfortunately. This is her kind of a question. What's the difference between the animal soul and the Yetza Hara, the evil inclination, and the vital human soul, and the other side? All these terms we generally say refer to the Yetza Hara. Is there a difference between them? I want to suggest that it could be that the difference between them is that the Yetza Hara means the evil counsel. The one who comes and tells you he's your best friend, but really he's your worst friend. That's the Yetza Hara. The animal soul is your strong, passionate desire for pleasure. So the Yetza Hara is cunning and can devise all kinds of tricks to achieve what it wants. So the Yetza Hara, I would suggest, is the seichel, the intellectual side of the other side, the sitra achra, the other side. Whereas the animal soul is the emotions. Because a person with strong emotions also will push through to get what he wants, not necessarily as cunning as a fox. The fox is the Yetza Hara. That's just a suggestion, it's an aside. But the point is that the three garments of the thought, speech, and deed that come from the other side in the Beinoni never win. They never gain control of the person's life. Page 175. They do not prevail over the divine soul to the extent of clothing themselves in the body. They don't enclothe themselves in the limbs of our physical body. Not in the way we think, but moyach, continuing down, fourth Hebrew lines, not in our thoughts, in our brain, not in our mouth, in what we say, or the other 248 limbs of our being, of our physical body. Lahatiyam, and what's the point of if the Yetza Hara, if the other side would gain control of these garments, it would cause them, it would influence them to transgress, to cross the red line into the forbidden area where you're not supposed to go. You remember the story I told you about Rabbi Schneer's son, a relative who wanted to go to the mikveh one day because he went to mikveh every day, always went to mikveh, and he was on a unusual day off, a few days vacation in the area of the Dead Sea, the Yam Suf. And there was a river, and there was no mikveh there. There was vacation with his family, and there was a sign, do not bathe in this river. And but he felt he had to go to the mikveh, so he jumped in. And his wife said, "Don't do it, don't do it." It says the sign, don't jump in. He said, "I'm just going to jump in and jump out, just one time to immerse myself, so I can daven properly." And a day or two later, he had a heart attack, died. So we have warnings: do not go over the red line. You're playing with fire. So all the negative commandments of the Torah, they are not restrictions. They are warnings. Don't go there. This is not a place where you can survive spiritually. Now, in the Beinoni, I don't know. In the Beinoni, the other side never gains control of the garments of what he does or what he says. But the highest level garment is what you think. There, the Beinoni is not in control. There it's Reuben and Shimon are both holding on to the talus, and they're fighting over it. Bottom of page 175. So what is the situation? The three garments of the godly soul, they are the only ones that gain control of the person in his physical body or in his speech so that the body is constantly being directed to fulfill and to enclose itself in the garments provided by the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. Each mitzvah of the Torah is another garment for our soul. We learned in chapter 5. You see, things that we learned, they start to fall into place now. We learned in chapter 5 that when the neshama, after 120 years, goes to Gan Eden, what is the neshama going to wear?
All the mitzvahs that we did throughout our life.
What?
All the mitzvahs that we did through our whole life.
Exactly. That you see, you could be a makubal. That's what it says in the book of Kabbalah called the Eitz Chaim, the Tree of Life, by Rabbi Chaim Vital, that the garments of the neshama in the world to come are the mitzvahs that were done here. Each mitzvah is a garment. And in the time of resurrection, when the body is reunited with the soul, then these mitzvahs will be the actual garments of the physical body, because the physical body has a claim on them, because every mitzvah you did with your physical body. And you can't ignore that, because your neshama could never do a mitzvah without it. So in Gan Eden, it's a spiritual reward, that the garments are spiritual garments in the world to come, but in the time of resurrection, the body will be resurrected, and the body will be dominant, and the soul will take its inspiration from the body, because the body did the mitzvahs. And if we think about it, if we say Hashem's will and wisdom is expressed in the Mishnah, in that scenario that we described of Reuben and Shimon arguing over the talus, who owns it, and that's the will and the wisdom of God expressed in the Mishnah. But it's not physical. It's a scenario. It's a scenario in the Mishnah. It's a holy scenario. But in real life, the things that you do with your physical body are not scenarios, they're the real thing. And when does that real thing achieve its perfection? In the time of resurrection, when the body is reunited with the spirit, and then the godliness. Where is God? Where do we really see the godliness? Not just in the spiritual scenario, but in the actuality. That's why Hashem creates and created and continues to create a physical world, because that's where he wants to have his home and his place, in the heart of every Jew and in the body of every Jew. That we become walking, talking manifestations of Hashem's holy temple. And on the universal level, that when everybody's on this level, then we have what the prophet spoke about. They wrote it in the foyer of the United Nations, that the world will be filled with the knowledge of God like the waters cover the sea. So therefore, on page 176, since the godly soul is in control in the life of the Beinoni, there's a struggle, but he never loses. So therefore, we can say on the Beinoni, he never did a transgression in his life, never made a mistake. And he never will make a mistake. How can you say such a thing? Free will is never taken away from anybody. Everybody always has free will. Therefore, a person can always do tshuva. It's never, ever too late to do tshuva. And it's never impossible to do tshuva. A person always has free will. So if a person always has free will, that means he could always make a mistake. How can you say on the Beinoni that he never will, he never did a mistake and he never will? How can you say he never will? Well, I remember asking the teacher this question before, when I was still an unmarried young man student. And I asked the person who was teaching us, and he looked at us and he said, well, listen, can you imagine that I will ever have a cheeseburger? I said, no, of course not. So I never will. But the Beinoni is so programmed, has so taken control of himself, that he doesn't make a mistake. And what about the fact that beforehand, maybe he did make mistakes? How can we say he never made a mistake? He never did a transgression? Well, we answered that question already in chapter 7. And that's the answer to that question is through tshuva, that tshuva transforms mistakes into mitzvahs. Just to summarize again, because when a person makes a mistake and he realizes he made a mistake, he feels so terrible, he feels so bad, that he prepares himself thoroughly, deeply, through and through, that he'll never make that mistake again. Then the mistake itself is a driving factor that makes him to be super careful whenever this scenario should repeat itself. And he now he owns that scenario. And he doesn't lose, he'll never lose in that area again. So really, isn't it extraordinary that what do we conclude from this? That one of the only ways to perfect one's service of Hashem is through the mistakes that we made by doing tshuva on them. Whereas that's a very dangerous attitude, though, because that led to the completely wrong approach to Judaism at the time of the Baal Shem Tov. There was a certain group that advocated that approach to life, that let us do all the sins now, and then we'll do tshuva on them, and that way we will achieve spiritual perfection. So they were practically advising people to behave terribly. And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with it is that there's a Talmudic dictum that a person who sins and says, I'll do tshuva later, eat, drink, and be merry now, and tomorrow I'll do tshuva, they give him no opportunity to do tshuva. It becomes impossible for him to do tshuva because he's using tshuva as part of his main motivation for doing a transgression, for being bad. Shuba justifies evil through such a rationalization, so therefore the tshuva becomes ineffective. Okay, but a person who never does a transgression, a tzaddik, he cannot stand where the Baal tshuva stands because he cannot elevate those areas where the Baal tshuva messed up, because the tzaddik never messed up. So therefore, the Baal tshuva ends up on a much higher level than the tzaddik. So what do we see? If a tzaddik, doesn't want to do a transgression and then do tshuva on it because tshuva is a closed door, because he did transgression with the idea that he will do tshuva on it, and that's not going to work. So what should a tzaddik do to achieve such a high level? Well, one thing he could do is make Baalei Tshuva.
Is what?
Make Baalei Tshuva. Because when you help a person to do a mitzvah, then you have a share in their mitzvah. So without doing a transgression, a tzaddik can also have access to the high spiritual levels of tshuva by making people do tshuva. Thank you very much. That's just a fantasy.
Rabbi Pape, I have a question.
Good.
Okay, so this idea, like we've been learning all year, I guess, like in Tanya, of how like, and I guess other classes, how like about Shuba, or anybody who has like come to Judaism is like at a higher level than a tzaddik in a way, because they've transgressed and come back. And the question is it like the human side of your soul, of like so many about Shubas from our different conversations, different bring-ins, and like everyone at times feel that they're never good enough, for the people who are like from birth or Siddiqim, or they're not that level, but like yet we're being told in Tanya that we are higher. So is it like the Yetza Hara that's telling you, no, you're not good enough?
100%.
Yeah.
Any negative thought like that is the Yetza Hara. That's your animal soul broadcasting the message of the Yetza Hara. Stay tuned for our next broadcast. And like we said yesterday, it's like a fly, comes back and back and back and back and back the whole time. I used to drive a car. A major area of conflict in driving a car was not to turn on the radio. Anybody who drives a car knows how tempting it is to turn on the radio, just have something to accompany you when you drive. But it's 100%, it's like running a sewer through your mind.
I like quiet cars. Makes you think.
I need something.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being with us again.
I think
Goodbye, Pesha.
Pesha wants to talk, but I cannot unmute her. So
She has to unmute herself. There you go.
No, I didn't have anything. I didn't have anything to say, but thank you very much.
I'm sure you do have plenty to say, but we'll merit another time. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Which city do you live in?
Coral Springs.
Who's in Coral Springs? Rabbi Denberg. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Mike. Rabbi Friedman,
Exactly. Yeah. very good.
guys,
Yep.
all my dear friends.
Baruch Hashem.
Yeah, you got a fine crew down there.
They're good, very, very good people.
Uh-huh. They're inspire us.